recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number, I don't know what the number is here.
627.
627, 629, depending on how you count it. Today is Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. Coming to the end of the year. Excited to be back from VMware Explorer. Matt is our co-host today. Matt, how you doing today?
Eric, I'm well. This is our first recording post Explorer in Barcelona. I want to say thank you to all the V community members that had come out to the event and stopped by the community booth and picked up their vExpert gift, or just even stopped by to say hi. It was wonderful to see old friends and to meet new friends in person. The event, I will have to say, really exceeded expectations, I think, from both participants and for us employees. It was a different level of interaction, a different level, I think, of attendance that was even above and beyond what everyone was expecting, and just had the vibe, I think, that, dare I say, we were looking for in San Francisco, but maybe didn't get. Lots of product announcements that we're going to be covering and whatnot here through the next coming episodes as we go into the end of the calendar year and into 23 with everything that has come out with for vSphere 8, vSAN 8, all of the EUC announcements, everything that we're doing with the ARIA suite and whatnot. So plenty of content and episodes to come. But before we get to all of that, sir, my favorite questions. How are you doing out there? I know that as a team, we've been battering some health issues post-Barcelona. How's the weather out there on the West Coast? And my most important question, what is the color of the bay?
Hey, great summary, Matt, of what I thought Explorer in Europe was like. It was fantastic to meet everybody, and excited to be there, and excited to pick up COVID from you guys. So that was good. Got home and tested positive for COVID, and I have been living in my master bedroom here. If you happen to be watching us on youtube.com/vbarbecue, you'll see that I'm in my bedroom because I am still in quarantine. I think today is the day that I'm going to get a non-positive test or a negative test, and I'll be free to get out of my quarantine room. The color of the bay, I've been outside, though. I get to go outside and drive around as long as I don't infect anybody. And it is a beautiful day in California. It's sunny and a little chilly, in the 50s, 40s at night, 50s, and maybe up to 60 during the day, but beautiful. So it's just a dark green, clear bay today as we are in Northern California in the wintertime. I'm excited to have Graham Barker on the show today. We're going to be talking about the new vCenter converter that's out. I think it was in beta, but now it's out live. So Graham is here, so we'll get to him in a minute. But before we get to him, let's go to Corey Romero and talk about vExperts and what's happening out in Utah.
Yeah, so it's very cold in Utah. I think in my house, it hasn't even gone above 30 since I've been home from Barcelona. But just to kind of reiterate what Matt and Eric said, it was fantastic to meet everybody who's new in the program, as well as see old people face to face. It was just such a pleasure to go. Completely worth the trip. Just to hang out with the V community and the V experts, and it was great to give out that amazing gift. I got so much excellent feedback on that. So I've got some vExpert news. First, we've got vExpert applications are open. The submission period, so the last time that you can clean up your application, get everything submitted, is going to be January 13th. So that's going to be the last day. Voting will start on the 14th and go through the February 10th. Now, if we're done with voting before February 10th, we will go ahead and announce. We also have a briefing coming up on December 1st for multi-cloud. Details of that will go out on Monday. Another email that's going to go out on Monday. So we've got a bunch of stuff. I'll send out 2 different emails. So in this one email, we're going to do boosting your content views for $0 per click. So if anyone is familiar with advertising on Facebook and Instagram and how expensive it can be, or even just Google, it's very, very expensive. So we're going to go ahead and talk about VMware advocacy and how you can boost your content. And I've got some data to share in the email of just what I've done and what I've seen in just a week or two and seeing how many of my impressions have gone up. We are going to do a call for blogs, and the call for blogs is going to be on the projects that you've done with your vExpert gifts. So the Intel Nook, I know a lot of people are talking about some really cool things that they've already done from the U.S. gift and things that they're going to do with the European gift. So that's going to also go out in the email on Monday, and then a separate email for something very, very cool. We've never done anything like this before. We're partnering with Intel on a major, major project. So be sure to watch your email for Monday. I will send out another email later in the week just because I know we're close to the holidays and not everyone's going to read their email. So I want to make sure we get that out to everyone, and everyone gets an exposure to that and an opportunity to work with Intel. So we're going to do a Intel webinar, just typically like we normally do. And then after that, we're going to get into some really, really cool stuff with Intel that we're partnering with. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I think this is exciting. So for people that happen to listen to this podcast, pay attention to your email. We got a lot of feedback when we gave away the Intel Nooks, that they weren't Intel, they were Max-Tang Nooks with Intel CPUs. We got a lot of people going, oh, I just didn't see it in the mail. I didn't notice there's going to be some free hardware. Could I get one? And so, a lot of people missed out. A lot of people in Europe, because it was the end of this season, we were able to give a lot of those people ones, even though they missed their sign up. Well, I would say that this Intel deal that you're going to have out in mail, I would say the similar thing. If you're listening to this, you should pay attention, because by the time this program gets ramped up, there's going to be some interesting Intel gear directly from Intel that you will miss out on if you're not watching your mail. So definitely read your mails. Yep. Matt, before we go to Graham, anything else that you want to talk about before we kick off our show content with Graham?
Apple's charging standards right now is an absolute nightmare. I could go on a 20-minute rant about this, between what you need to do in as far as trying to take a single or limit the number of chargers that you have if you're trying to carry an iPad, an iPhone, a Apple Watch, and a set of AirPods. And you want to charge that at the fastest charging standard that they possibly have across all 4 devices. To get that right and to do it at the fastest possible speed is really just overly complex. And I think that this is only going to get worse, and it's needlessly difficult for consumers, and maybe possibly done just to keep things all within an Apple ecosystem. But that's outside of the conversation. I want to get over to vCenter Converter with Graham. It's one of our, I would call it, fundamental products, right? As we talk about the history of all things VMware, it was a product that went away, if I remember, for a while, that had disappeared off of our shelves in inventory. And then there was a couple of third parties that were out there. If I recall, Starwind was one of them that offered a third-party converter. And then we saw it go out into beta, and then now it's been productized. So want to step into that, going to dive into the history, a little bit of the product with Graham, talk about use cases. And even though that it's a product that's a senior or a veteran within the VMware inventory, how it's still relevant today.
Yeah, but before we get into that, Graham, we always start out with, give us a few minutes of who you are, where you work, how long you've been in the VMware ecosystem. How did you get where you are? Like, you can start from went to grade school and take us all the way on your journey, or you can just give us, the 2-minute elevator pitch of what's your career been like and who are you?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Greg Barker. I've been working with VMware Technologies now probably for, it must be since 2010, maybe just slightly earlier. So yeah, at least 12 years or so. And really, I started because of what we consider, what we take for granted now as a vMotion. I saw a vMotion in a new deployment. I saw it live. Couldn't believe that it was possible to move, a server from one piece of physical hardware to another without any kind of interruption to that workload. And that's really what triggered me to learn more about the VMware products that were available at the time, and really want to work with them more. It was like magic. So it's probably the same kind of story for a lot of people. After seeing something like that, you can't not but want to have an interest with it, and spend some time in your own time in home labs and things, and get more used to technologies, and eventually pursue a career in it. So that's really what I did. I think every stage of my career has involved, the core VMware product range, and then I've moved on to other things within the VMware lifecycle. So everything from support right the way through to administrative work and design and architectural bits and pieces. And now I work in system development with Dell, not directly with VMware products at the moment, but with similar things. So it's really helped my career working with the VMware technologies from really, really early on in my career, and kind of building on that all the way through.
All right, and the reason we have you on today is you have a blog, virtualg.uk is your blog URL, and you had a great blog that actually trended a little bit on our advocacy platform, VMware-sender-converter-getting-started. So getting started blog on the converter. So congrats to having a popular blog, and you managed to trend a little bit with that one, which as Matt says, it's a key topic. So good to have somebody from Dell here talking about it, even though that isn't your day job. So appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah.
How long have you been blogging before we get into vCenter Converter? How long have you been blogging?
It's roughly the same lifetime as my tweeting. So probably around 5 or 6 years, something like that, maybe slightly longer.
Nice. All right, so Matt, maybe you want to take us through vCenter Converter. And you're muted.
Of course I am, because I was coughing and sneezing of a fit, just like we've all been with this whole COVID thing. vCenter Converter, let's dive into that, right, Graham? As far as use cases, right? We have seen this as far as ingestion of physical machines, ingestion of both Fusion and Workstation machines into an ESX standalone host or full vCenter environment. And we can also see where this is used to pull in machines from a different hypervisor, so Hyper-V. So a product, as we had mentioned, that had went away for a while, but is now back and out there and productized and available within the product catalog. How did you first get introduced to this as far as the initial product? And what are some of the use cases that you ran into with this, and just walk us through your experience, and we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first time I used Converter was to do a migration from a bunch of physical servers onto a new VMware designed platform, or vSphere platform, right at the start of my career. And there were options from other vendors. There are other tools available, but at the time the Converter solution was highly attractive because it didn't just support Windows systems; it also supported Linux. And we were we weren't huge, but we were mostly Linux, but we did have the few Windows servers running too. So it was really useful to have something that would deal with both in the same tool that had zero cost. So it was almost like a no-brainer to use Converter, and we were able to move pretty much the whole of the data center onto the new platform with very minimal downtime due to some of the advanced features, such as the ability to sync up the storage on certain systems, and perform like a very quick cutover onto the new machines. Converter can power off the old system and power on the new VM, and so providing that all the backend architecture and infrastructure is operable, then you can use the Converter to not perfectly live and uninterrupted, but almost, So yeah, it's a very attractive product at the time, and it continues to have those features.
Does the new version allow for a live snapshot, right? Can we take that from a running machine, so to say, or an OS in a running state? Or does that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one of the great things about it is it's we don't have to copy the VM from a hypervisor layer. We can actually do it from within the OS, so with it online as well. So yeah, we can it basically deploys a small agent onto the OS, and then that's what it uses to do the transport, the copy of the storage across onto the destination system.
Yeah, think
And we
about
can
that
do
for
it.
testing in scenarios, right? Where we're looking at, we have a custom, database or custom enterprise application that is, we want to do some hardware testing, or we're looking to move it over to, a greenfield environment, but we need to be able to, snap that machines, but the data stores aren't connected in the environments yet between prod and this new greenfield. So there's no connectivity between those two stacks. We could use Converter in that instance to take a live snapshot of the machine, so with zero downtime, right? Where we don't have to power off the machine and do a hypervisor level snap of the VMDK. We can do this while it's running from within the guest OS, grab that export, stand it up in that greenfield environment, and do all of our testing that we need to do and provide validation.
Exactly. Not only can you do the snapshot option, but you can also ask Converter to turn off certain services during the cutover too. And then when the new VM or whatever it is gets powered on after the conversion's finished, those obviously get started up in whatever order you've specified within the operating system. So it has that extra layer as well, which is really good for complex applications that might reside on that particular VM or physical server.
I think about background processes that could be running out there that you wouldn't want to have, during the conversion process. If there would be some type of guest OS agent running for whether that's backup or modern AV, or some type of QSing service that would set off other cron jobs that we'd want to be able to pause during this conversion process, that we could do some type of orchestration based off of that during our conversion process. And then once we have migrated over to that secondary vCenter, to throw those services back on.
Yeah, precisely. Again, it's all built into the tool, so you don't have to log into the OS to set any of this stuff up. You can deploy the tool onto your workstation, as provided that it has access to the source and the destination, and configure all of these options and advanced settings within that tool.
So the tool really has two different options, right? We can do this as a standalone installation. So where it's a client server-esque type deployment, right? Where we could do it with, you would install both the server and the client on a local machine. In other words, that machine that you want to make the image copy of. Or you could have a standalone server-esque or a converter server installation, and then point that to a remote network machine. And that network machine, so long as it has the converter agent on it, could be both physical or virtual, correct?
Yeah, I guess that would work. Yes, and if Converter's not deployed on the source machine, it will push out an agent which will do all of the heavy lifting off the machine that you're actually working on. So yeah, so there's lots of topology options, which is nice to have, especially on a free tool like that as well.
And again, there's the hypervisor options, right? Where we had talked about this could be, as we had mentioned, a physical machine, something that's running in Fusion, in Workstation, on a standalone ESXi instance, or something that's fronted in more of a production environment with a full-blown vCenter and full cluster stack and whatnot of ESXi hosts. Or the great thing that we had talked about here is with conversion work, if you're trying to pull something out of Hyper-V and then moving it over to our stack as well.
Yeah, exactly. And even if the source machine is running in a hypervisor, you still have the option to use it to copy it as if it were a physical machine. So you can have the agent on the machine and have it do a live conversion. So you have you have extra flexibility there. If you're running the VM source system in a hypervisor, you can do either.
So one of the things I like to use this, or I think about it, is sizing operations, right? Where if you have that secondary environment that's out there that you want to run a true test environment as far as right sizing, where it's not just off of a backup copy, where it can be down to that application level where we're getting everything, that just in time snapshot rather than, let's call it a VMDK level backup, so that we have everything in a consistent state to see, all right, if we would right size this, when we go to run through that deployment options, we can change things like number of vCPUs and disks and RAM, can we not, right? We don't have to necessarily do that like for like copy over onto the destination instance. We have a lot of different resizing options that we can do in flight when we're consuming that or snapping it, if you will, to then send it over to that new destination.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about that tool is you can copy no matter what the source, whether it's a physical machine, a virtual machine, no matter the hypervisor it's currently on. When you choose the destination for that machine, where for it to copy to, yes, you can certainly customize almost every aspect of the hardware. So not only can we remove old hardware like floppy disk drives, CD-ROMs, even hard drives, but we can also add them as well and configure. If the destination is a hypervisor, we can configure and say, hey, look, this NIC, I want it to go onto that network. So we can do a lot of that work during the conversion process and have it automate that for us. And actually, you picked up on an interesting thing there. We talk about right sizing. The tool's also very, very useful for, I call it like a get out of jail free tool. We've all been there where we may have extended a VMDK too much, and especially if it's like a thick VMDK,
you're running up against the limit of the LUN, right?
That's it.
And
Yep.
It's not using anywhere near the amount of size that particular developer thought it was going to be.
Correct. Yep. We've all been there. So this tool is a great get out of jail free tool for doing a conversion of that machine, but modifying the size of the destination hard drives. Because the tool does like a block copy, we can, if you've got plenty of space on the drive, you can reduce the destination size of the drive down. But as long as it's at least the size of the current drive, it will actually give you all that space back on the destination, but it'll actually copy all the data across correctly. So you're not at risk of just chopping off half the end of the hard disk and losing data. It will actually build the data back up from scratch on the destination. So yeah, it's a really handy tool for downsizing hard drives, which otherwise is more challenging.
I think of it also when we were talking about adding hardware, where we talked about maybe the DC moves or moving over to a particularly greenfield environment where you're moving over that VMDK for the base OS already, but then you need to, let's say, for your data disk or the SQL DB that's residing on another storage infrastructure that's attached to that net new cluster, that now we need to add systematically into that VM with minimalized downtime. Well, rather than going through there and as part of we traditionally transferred over to the new cluster and then have to go into that individual VM and then do LUN assignments and whatnot, we can now do this as part of the copy process and then already have that new storage presented into the VM and ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, while you have that downtime opportunity, it's a great time to review whether you need to increase or decrease your compute as well. So you can add a couple of cores, reduce or increase the memory during that switchover period, which is minimalized, but we want to minimize the disruption as much as possible. So rather than kind of doing this process and then maybe a few months down the line, oh look, we're in a new data center, we've got more cores, let's add some to the VM. We just do it all at the same time. One process, one UI, and it's all dealt with.
Another use case that I've heard about this is from our friends in the SecOps, right, or forensic security, where they need to take a machine that has been potentially compromised or is running some type of potential unknown malware, or where they need to isolate that running state for legal holds or whatnot, where they will install that agent onto the particular machine or the server, depending on if it needs to be air-gapped, depending on the level of malware, and ingest that, right, into an air-gapped ESXi environment, and then use that as part of, okay, we're going to set a baseline. We will, here's our first iteration, and then all of the normal tools that we would have now that we have virtualized that guest OS instance, right? We have a known working state that we could always revert back to if we need to, as opposed to what we would be left with if we were just working with physical hardware on that compromised laptop.
Yeah, that's interesting use case actually. Yeah, it's not something I've actually come across in my working, but yeah, there's that and many other things I'm sure that would work for. Yeah, the main ones for me are straightforward conversions, physical to virtual, virtual to virtual as well, and then obviously the resizing of the hardware, especially those hard drives, which we can sometimes expand too far and get a bit go over top really on the sizing. But yeah, those are the main ones for me.
One of my questions on the virtual to virtual is that it's mostly because why would you go virtual to virtual? It's not incompatibility between vSphere levels, right? It's other reasons that you just might want to refactor your VM, right? In the virtual to virtual conversion.
Yeah, there's loads of reasons. One could be that you've got it working, you've got it running in Workstation, and rather than going through a painful process of exporting and importing, you've got one tool. You can do it all live. You can minimize the downtime if it's in use.
Yeah, think of a developer application, right, Eric? Where a developer has stood up a stack of VMs on a local workstation or Fusion instance. They're at the point now where they want to productize that or need to have more people accessing it, right? And a seamless way not only to move that out of Fusion or Workstation over to a vCenter cluster, but then to expand those resources on the fly as necessary.
Yeah, I would say that, Graham, I noticed on your blog article, getting back to your blog article at virtualg.uk, you don't have the beginning of the blog article, like why you'd want to be doing this or what are the big use cases, other than when you get down into your blog article, you give the menus and then you can select, the kind of the menus, and then you're basically, what type are you going to local machine, or so you can digest from your blog article like why you'd be using this tool, because by using the tool you see the different ways to convert. But at the beginning of the article, I was going through it and I'm like, it doesn't really explain like why some of these cases might get me, right? Now, if you're running a big data center, you probably run into these, right? So you've probably already been using this tool. One question if I have, so that's a summary to my question was like, I got your blog article and it was like, doesn't really give me the high level. It's a classic guy that's been using the tool a ton and he just gets into like, here's the tool. One question for you then is, are there significantly new things in the tool versus the older versions? I mean, they obviously had a beta, so they were testing it. Is it just because they're doing more platforms that they have to, make sure vSphere 8 works with it? Or are there new features in this version that are worthwhile mentioning?
Yeah, that's something that actually surprised me. When I got hold of the beta, I was expecting like a brand new UI, maybe something a bit like the new versions of vCenter or whatever recently, or like the host client or something like that with the new graphics, but or not so new graphics as it's been around for a while now. But it's actually exactly the same user interface as it was before. My understanding is that the reason it was taken offline a while back was for its security improvement. So because the tool had been around for so long, it needed an overhaul really on the security side. So VMware have done a great job in doing that for everyone, so that we can use the software and not worry as much, about security implications. And that's what the beta was all about, from my understanding. So I was expecting a new shiny user interface to get used to. But when I installed the tool, I was like, oh, this looks exactly the same as it used to. Which is
The GUI
maybe a
here,
good thing.
just for fun, the GUI here looks like an old Windows compiled GUI, right? It looks like it's still based on the old version before we went to the new web interfaces with everything. It looks like it's just a Windows app.
Yep, I think they've just improved the security of it, and who knows what will happen in the future. Now that it's got like a security sign off, if you like, more organizations will still be able to use it, because sometimes larger orgs can't use stuff if it's got certain CVS scores or something like that. So
Right.
now it's all been sorted. We might see big adoption, and if we see a lot of downloads and a lot of usage of the tool, then who knows? Maybe more investment can go into the product, and we can see a nice unified user interface.
Yeah. Well, or if you're somebody that just wants to remember the old Windows interface apps, go run this thing, because this looks like it's like a throwback GUI.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's almost as it was before. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm actually saying that in a good way. Which when you're talking about a conversion tool, it's just nice to have something that's compiled app that just runs, does the conversion. I can see where they'd have to totally make it secure, because the thing probably would allow you to do anything, right? And you could probably hack the tool to make VMs that had holes in them, right? So I could see where they'd have to revamp that guy.
Yeah, sure. If the old saying is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Maybe that applies here. So the feature set has always been fantastic, and I honestly would struggle to find an additional set of features to add into it. So yeah, it works. It works.
Yeah.
It's safe and secure. Yeah.
We do have an active discussion about the product. It has its own community over on VMTN. If you're within the vCenter directory within VMTN, look for converter standalone discussions. It's also, the community itself is linked from the product page for vCenter Converter, and you can go through there if you have a question or just research some potential use cases. See maybe potentially how other users are interacting with this, or a particular anomaly that they've come up with, or and how they've been able to solve that. Plenty of posts that have been here within just even with the last week or so, with Linux machines and whatnot, being able to do this off of a remote network machine. And we had talked about with that client server where you're able to push out the agent on a remote instance that you may not want to do the full entire deployment to. So check that out over on the converter standalone discussions for VMTN.
So Graham,
that's a great forum. Sorry. Okay, that's actually a surprisingly active forum, and it's a very useful place to go, not just to read, but also if you've got any problems, you can file them in there, and people come back to you pretty quickly.
I always ask people, when you're doing your blog, I noticed that you actually have a Black Friday VMware deal ad on the front of your blog, which means you must be doing some regular blogging, because getting that guy up there is kind of fun. We do have a Black Friday deal on. I think the new Fusion at Workstation stuff will be up there. I see you notice. I know it says vSphere too. I haven't drilled down to see what what are the rest of the Black Friday deals? I should probably get on that today because that's going to be happening it's probably active now, right? Would be my guess. Let's see, Grand November.
Yeah, I think it went active today. On the vSphere front, I think it's the some of the packs, like the Essentials Plus pack, and possibly Standard as well, that are available just this week, I think. But yeah,
a deal. I wonder if they're selling them as 1-year licenses or whether you can get a perpetual license. I don't know how that works these days. I think it's 1 year, right?
I think you get the perpetual rights, but with only 1 year support, and then you'd have to go to renew that at the end of the year. Yeah, don't take my word on that one. But yeah, it'll be
interesting thought. I've got a couple of servers that, you know, I get my vExpert licenses like you guys do, right? Like that's the way I get my licenses now, is because I'm a vExpert and I get my license. But I'm like, you know, I got a couple of these that I don't know what Broadcom's going to do, and like, do I know whether they're going to, you know, be here forever, right? Like, is the vExpert program going to be giving me free licenses for the next 10 years? So there's a little bit of me that wants to go buy, you know, Essentials, you know, just for my machines in Iraq. So I got a forever vSphere license that I can run, you know, for a while, right? You know, without having to worry about anything, right? Just I got that machine covered. I don't have to deal with it. And I think those guys, I got to go look at the pricing on them, but I think they're like $500 or, you know, 5 days, $800 is get an ESX license forever.
And we've been talking about Fusion and Workstation throughout this particular recording, and new versions. So Fusion 13 and Workstation 17 have just dropped here within the last couple of weeks. Fusion 13 on the Mac is a significant one because of support for Windows, now official support, right? For Windows 11 with ARM. Michael Roya hopefully will be joining us here within either next week or sometime in the month of December. We need to confirm with him to talk about that release and what that means. But yes, so definitely, obviously, vExpert. If you're part of that program, you have licensing for that. But if you're going to be moving that over to a production environment or consuming that, you know, more than that single instance, a nice discount for both Fusion and Workstation here as we come into the U.S. holiday.
And I would say that I brought this up only because I was still promoting your blog, virtualg.uk. It's really a nice blog. You got a bunch of different vSphere articles, VMware articles, vRealize articles, really laid out nice vCommunity articles you're pointing at.
Yeah, Graham, I just read through your VCSA backup for 8, right? We're creating that SMB share, and what a great just intro for some of the folks that are, you know, standing up home labs for the first time and have that vCenter go awry, right? Yeah. Where they put all of the configurations and you get your virtual switches out there and the DVSs and everything set up and all of your service accounts, and then something goes amiss and your vCenter's dead, right? And you need to start all over from scratch. So even at the home lab level, to be able to put that, you know, standalone machine out there, I use I just run a single Windows 2016 box that's not domain joined, that has an SMB share that's out there that also runs the vExpert licensing for that Veeam is so kind to provide for us, and then just, you know, moves that off. But, you know, you've detailed that process for vCenter 8 with SMB support. Another great article that's out there on VirtualG UK.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah, it's the backup utility is built into the vCenter. So my attitude is put a blog out there about it, and it's a supported way to back it up, and also the restore options are there too. So yeah.
Nice. I also like your VCAP 6 DC exam simulator. That's kind of cool. Like, so everybody that's listening to this, you got to go check out this blog, virtualg.uk. Graham, good job on that. Really nice blog. Lots of sections, certification section, reviews. Can't complain. Really, really nicely done. You must spend some time on this guy. You must have a lot of time over there in the UK, right? Like it rains a lot over there.
Yes, I was afraid you're going to ask what the weather was like. Yeah, it's pretty cold here at the moment. So Yeah, I have less free time now, but during the COVID lockdown situation, there's plenty of time to put a few articles out there. So you'll probably see a fair few through that period. But I just like to give back, to the community, and it's also a great way for me to, if I'm going to be learning how to do the vCenter backup, I can just type it up at the same time as learning it. So it doesn't cost much extra time, and someone else can learn too.
All right, the last thing. Go ahead, Matt.
Of all of the announcements that have come out from both Barcelona and San Francisco, what has piqued your interest, and what do you see yourself blogging about into, with a little bit of time that we have left here in 2022 and going into 23? What are some of those articles that we can expect to be looking for you to be diving into and blogging about?
For me, the most interesting thing was the new architecture for vSAN. So whereas we still have the current architecture, the new one is being revamped.
Disk groups, right? Disk groups are no more.
Cache disks, all that stuff's gone. So it's modernized the vSAN solution, because now we're basically SSD or NVMe 100%. So the old days of hybrid are going away. So vSAN needed a little bit of re-architecture, but only certain components of it. So most of the software is actually the same as it used to be, but there are some differences in how a lot of the I/O works and the protection for the storage too. But that's interesting because it's a new architecture and it's not just like an additional feature or set or something like that. That's
listeners stand by. Listeners stand by. That is one of the topics of discussions that we're going to have between now and the end of the year with that product team to come on to talk about the new vSAN 8 architecture and where that is all headed, and some of the capabilities within now that we don't have those caching groups and what that means for SPVM. And it's a great topic. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah. All right. And final, with 5 minutes left, Graham, we do live stream on youtube.com/vbarbecue. So if you want to look at BARBECUE, if you want to look at what Graham looks like, see his face. So next time you see him at a VMUG meeting or at a UserCon, or maybe even at a VMware Explorer next year, you'll recognize him. Go to vBarbecue, give us a like and a follow. And the reason we call it vBarbecue is because we try at VMworlds to have vBarbecues when we don't want to give everybody COVID. So we haven't had a barbecue in a year or two, so that's coming up. Next time we have a big event, we're going to go get a pig and some good barbecue. Graham, do you get to barbecue in the UK? Or do you have a favorite barbecue that you like to consume in the UK?
I'm a follower of the podcast. I've heard all sorts of barbecue options and recipes and things, but sadly, to give you an example, it's 4 Celsius or about 40 Fahrenheit here now, so it's just too cold. We might have one barbecue a year or something like that in the summer, just a selection of things, but unfortunately, the weather doesn't really make it a repetitive thing for us.
So they don't make like barbecued fish and then wrap it in newspaper and then you get fries and like what like
no, unfortunately not. No, we'll have to pick up some tips when we have the next vExpert one and bring that to the UK.
I was on the tube one time when I was over in the UK, and it was one of these wintry, cold, rainy, miserable days. And I was sitting next to somebody, and where are you from? And I'm California. And I'm like, I just looked at them and I went, you guys need to move out of this country. You need to go anywhere else. This is definitely an indoor type of place, no question.
Yeah, it's a nice place, lots of greenery and countryside, but it is cold in the winter.
Yeah, I would say get out to Bath and Bristol and Edinburgh, down out in the country, and it is really, really pretty, right? No question.
It is.
So you got that going for us. Where California, we've been in a drought for about 3 years now. We're like turning into Phoenix, right? Where we're going to have is rock yards and rock backyards and boulders, and you're gonna plant your boulder and then you're gonna pet it, and we're gonna be like a desert here for one of these years. So I gotta say, there's trade-offs wherever you go. Matt, any last words that we want to hit Graham before we run out of time?
Graham, besides your website that we've talked about here prolifically, as far as social media, or you had talked about your Twitter account, or is there any other social platforms that you're currently using? I know Twitter is a little bit in flux. We've seen some people talking about Mastodon, or maybe just making over a switch back to LinkedIn altogether. So if you are of that persuasion, would you mind sharing your social channels for those that want to follow you along?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Graham Barker. My picture's on there, so you can recognize me from there. And then Twitter. Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I don't have any plans to leave. So virtualg_UK is Twitter. And my email address is on my blog if you want to reach out that way.
Fantastic. We appreciate you having on. Looking for all the vSAN content coming in here into the new year.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, nice having you, Graham. Great to kind of connect.
Likewise.
All right, we'll be back next week. Until then, everybody go get some barbecue, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the U.S. that celebrates that. I'm looking forward to some turkey, Matt.
I am looking forward to my standalone single instance turkey meal this year. We're trying to do the right thing and isolate here with a little bit of a lingering of COVID case. But, we're happy to be healthy. If you're of that persuasion, the vaccination did its job, right? We're here. Yeah. We're a little bit sick. We're a little bit under the weather, but thank goodness none of the team has been hospitalized or anything like that. Yeah. So if that means being, flying it solo for Thanksgiving, I have my health and I am immensely thankful for that.
Yeah, I would say the vaccine worked for me. I did get it, and I did, but I had a light cold, never went in my chest, never anything that was a serious risk to my health. So that's what I've been telling people. It takes a little bit of a while to get a negative test out of me, right? As I'm like over 60 years old now, so I think everything just slows down a little bit. So I'm on day 13, still testing slightly positive, but I'm excited to be out of quarantine as well. And I'm glad that you're doing well, Matt, as well. And I do sympathize with a lot of the V community in Europe, because Julia has shared with us in a private chat here that a lot of people in the V community that were at Explore also came down with COVID. So I think we were a community.
Any major event like that, right? You put 10,000 disparate people from all over, EMEA into, a multi-day event in relative close quarters at both the event itself and after hours activities and whatnot. It's certainly opportune.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a vExpert at the vExpert party on Monday that was COVID positive that we interacted with, like me and you. And I know I picked it up, and then maybe I gave it to you, Matt, because you were a few days behind me.
I don't think so. I know that the individual that was forthright enough, and I won't name that person, but that they were kind enough to reach out on LinkedIn and notify me that they had sat next to me on the plane ride home back from Barcelona to JFK, tested positive that next morning. So, these things happen. It's just one of those things. And that's, again, I go back to the power of the vaccines, and that it's just a matter of time in some instances. And this was my first go at it after what we're now almost 3 years into this. So again, I feel very grateful for, the medicine, the availability of that, to, not only, easily get it, but then for it actually to do its job, right?
Yeah, it did its job for sure. No question. Absolutely. And with that fun note, I'm going to go get some lunch, and I hope you guys also have a great Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobble. Thanks. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.